Welcome to the PooCast podcast with your hosts,
Browne
and Pickering. G'day and thanks for joining us again on the PooCast podcast. I'm Brian Pickering.
And I'm Kaye Browne.
And I'm Jocelyn Watts. Well, there's been some interesting feedback about our first show, wasn't there?
Oh, yeah. Actually, not just about the name, though. It seems that some people thought that, like, I look pretty cute between the two of you, like the rose between two... No, the thorn between two roses, wasn't it? Yes.
Always in your dreams, sunshine. But it was fun, given we haven't done a podcast in a while.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's all about sharing the latest research and science on how to achieve the best physical and mental health from the food we eat every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's so many different opinions out there, conflicting and whatever. It's literally a case of who do you believe? Yeah, exactly.
That's right. For instance, and I'm quoting from yourlifechoices.com.au, there's little evidence to prove that low-fat milk is healthier than its full-cream counterpart.
Mm-hmm.
That tone of voice is mine. Most likely came about not because of scientific backup, but because of the move against saturated fats in the 1960s, with the belief that saturated fats lead to weight gain and heart disease that has since been totally disproved.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, healthy fats are good for us.
Yes, absolutely. Research has found that because fat is more satisfying, that is as in filling, we don't feel the need to eat as much. Which is good to reduce overall calorie intake. And in fact, saturated fat in dairy can protect against certain diseases that are not linked to heart disease.
And that's almost totally against what I've always heard over the years. And that's the problem, isn't it? You know, what's got scientific backing? How do you know? So hopefully with these PooCasts, we'll be able to, over time, I guess, look at both sides of the equation.
Or even more sides.
Well, your point of view and Jocey's point of view, but yeah. Certainly both sides. Yeah. But seriously, it's really important that you do your own research. We're just here to kind of say, well, this is the research that we've done. And, just because you're eating healthy doesn't mean that you're eating the right things. Oh. There are certain foods out there that are just not right.
It's constantly changing.
Totally. Yeah. Anyway, speaking of which, we're going to have our healthy lifestyles nutritionist, to say easy to pronounce, Caitlyn Henderson with us right after the PooCast news update with Kaye Browne.
Did you know Australia has some of the highest rates of gut illnesses in the world? Mm-hmm. Things like inflammatory bowel disease, colorectal cancers, and related allergic diseases. And with so many suffering stomach pain and discomfort every day, it's no wonder sales of supplements like probiotics have taken off. But do they work? Sadly, probably not. The Mater Hospital's Director of Gastroenterology, Jacob Begun, says there's no real scientific evidence they do anything to restore the 300 species of bacteria in our microbiome, whereas prebiotics, that's ones before the pros, are the way to a healthy gut. Yes, they do come in powder form, but the doctor suggests a simpler and cheaper way to feed our bacteria is with soluble and insoluble fibre found in things like bananas and sweet potato.
Well, thank goodness I like both of those. And that's the problem, isn't it, with prebiotics and probiotics? It's so confusing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yes, not helped by all the lovely advertising people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can you spare just 20 minutes a day to avoid going to hospital? New research published in the American Medical Association's monthly journal has found that just 20 minutes of exercise a day can help keep you away from all those other sick people in hospitals. They put activity monitors on 81,000 people, and we're delighted to find just this small amount of daily exercise is enough to ward off many uncomfortable, painful, and life-shortening health conditions. Mm-hmm. And from our Only in America files, a new treatment for constipation has just received the green light, not the poo light, the green light. Although it's probably not something you might have considered possible. It's a vibrating capsule.
What?
Yep. Oh. Did you know the product called Vibrant is a prescription-only capsule which its makers say uses gentle vibrations to stimulate the colon mechanically. You'll be pleased to know it's a single-use product. And despite our poking a little fun, it's envisaged Vibrant will bring relief to thousands, especially those suffering from the side effects of other medications.
I can't believe it. Seriously.
Oh, well, tell you what, mate.
How would that be? Can you imagine you go to work and go, it's like, what's going on? You happy? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm on a prescription medication.
What do you reckon, Jocey?
Go to work for me.
Oh, no. Oh, dear. Well, yeah, that's the PooCast news. Thank you very much. I don't know where you
can expect in the future.
I don't know where you get any of these stories from, but they're great. It's like last time we had, what was it, Poo Right, Poo Wrong, Poo Right? Now we got the...
Would I tell you a lie?
Anyway, look, let's move on. Have you ever done one of those fad diets, you know? How did it go for you? Well, let's see what our Healthy Lifestyles Australia dietitian has to say.
And on the phone, we have Caitlyn Henderson from Healthy Lifestyles Australia. G'day, Caitlyn.
Hello, how are you?
We're fine, thanks. And now I know what you are. You're an APD, aren't you?
Correct, yes, accredited practicing dietitian.
Hey, that sounds much better than just saying dietitian, nutritionist. You know, accredited just says it all.
Yes. Well, we're qualified people.
Good on you.
And there are a stack of you because you also do continuing education, just like vets and doctors and that. It's not like you just get a rubber stamp and that's it forever. You have to keep working at it.
Yeah, that's right. So we've got to do about 30 hours a year of CPD, so continuing professional development, which we log and report. So we're always learning and always trying to improve our skills.
Well, that's fantastic. And that's exactly what vets do as well, and vet nurses and all those sort of people. And doctors do it as well. But, yeah, interesting.
Fad diets. So many options. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mm-hmm.
Without mentioning
and
any
you don't have to be
names.
too diplomatic.
Yeah. Okay. No one's going to hear
right.
this.
So, I pretty well learn about these fad diets through my clients. You know, you've got your HCG diets, your fast 800s, your paleos, your cookie diet, your high protein, low carb, ketogenic. There's many more. Generally, they're not designed, well, maybe they attempted to make them sustainable long term, but most people cannot maintain any of these diets long term, greater than 2 years. So these ones should be taken with a grain of salt, essentially. So they're not really something that I recommend to people to do, you know, fad diets. I definitely have more of a everything in moderation approach, and balance is key approach.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it nice and simple. And there's a lot of stress that comes with some of these diets and overthinking of foods, and then you're kind of classifying foods into good and bad, and that's where it can become a little bit negative and detrimental to just generally having a better diet.
Well, as you said, you know, everything in moderation is the thing. I mean, the Mediterranean diet I've looked at over the years, and I used to live in Spain years ago, and quite funnily, the Mediterranean diet allowed me to put on I don't know how many kilos, but maybe that was something to do with, you know, the late dinners and the whatever and not exercising. But
how important is timing when eating?
Yeah.
Just out of interest?
Yeah, there's extremes of very poor timing of eating and no consistency with eating. And then there's, you know, the less extreme of, you know, not having, you know, if you're eating before 8 o'clock, that sort of thing is going to be okay. So essentially it can be important if you have a very inconsistent diet where you're not eating at regular-ish meal times, but there's no real hard and fast rule that you have to, you know, stop eating by a certain time at night. It does also depend on what time you're going to bed and what time you're waking up. It is good for our body to have an overnight fast, but it's not, you know, it's not something that we regulate terribly. As long as you're not having, you know, a big bowl of ice cream at 10 o'clock at night right before you go to sleep. That's probably the thing to avoid.
And we should be having breakfast, shouldn't we, Kaye?
I do. Eventually.
No, it's we won't go into the detail there, but Kaye's not a morning person, so yeah.
Oh, I see.
Couple of cups.
All right.
I mean, there's always a belated breakfast, a smaller morning tea that you can consider your first first meal of the day.
I knew I liked you, Caitlyn.
Yeah, you girls have just teamed up, I can tell. Well, Caitlyn, we know you've got some more appointments coming up, so we'd love to catch up again.
Yes, please.
And,
I've got so many more questions.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Caitlyn. Caitlyn Henderson from Healthy Lifestyles Australia.
Well, speaking of fad diets, I thought we should start sharing and comparing some of the yummy dishes that these two make. Anyone want to go first?
Well, I think we should go to the kitchen. What do you reckon?
Absolutely. Let's go.
See you later.
Wow, I can see you've already been very, very busy chopping up things here. What deliciousness are we going to have today?
Okay, we're having a prawn and asparagus stir fry. It's one of the meals that I had on the CSIRO Total Wellbeing Diet, and one of my favourites because I love seafood.
So do I, and so does Brian. Okay, let's get started. What's involved?
Okay, so basically we're doing the prawns first. And then we take that out and then pop it onto to keep them warm in a separate plate. And then we put the vegetables in after that. And once they're ready, we bring the prawns back in and just add some garnish with the lemon and any soy sauce and.
Fantastic. Now, I happen to notice that you've got some of my favourites here because a lot of people nowadays are actually suffering food intolerances and their stomachs get a bit icky. And you can now get an alternative. Instead of using garlic and onion, you can get oil that's already infused with the flavour of garlic and onion separately or together. So we're going to use that today instead of using the real thing.
Yes.
And that actually saves a bit of time as well. And, you know, we're all very time poor. So let's get started.
Okay. So let's start with the garlic and onion infused oil. And we need about 15 mils of that. I've already heated the pan at the start, so that's at medium. We're stir frying, so we need a higher heat. Okay. So we're going to do this in two halves because we put too much in once. It's
going to go
overwhelming for the fry pan. So we're putting it there.
Very good. Take a big chunk. Time is of the essence.
Yes, it doesn't take long to cook these.
Oh, almost ready to do.
Would you like to just cut off a little bit of alfoil there? Just enough.
Certainly would. It always happens.
So we'll add the asparagus and some green capsicum and some zucchini. We'll just pop the lid on for a couple of moments.
Which is probably a good idea with the lid on. Makes it happen quicker and it steams the vegetables as well.
Yeah, steams without, so that it doesn't get overcooked at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think that's just about ready. We might just add the prawns back into the pan. Oh, nice.
Yum. Let's take that out. Here are shots.
Okay, good. On the plate ready?
Can't wait. Here you go. Do you want me to hold it?
Yes, sir.
I think so.
Yeah. Oh, that's better. Oops.
And skeleton
Garnish with lemon juice. Lemon slices.
Well, look, that was great seeing you guys make this stuff. Thank you very much, and thank you to the CSIRO Diet. We were so excited to eat it, we forgot to take some photos of us eating. But who wants to see people eating, enjoying themselves anyway? It was delicious. So we'll be back to do more in your kitchen. That's pretty good.
Welcome. Thank you. It's the CSIRO low-carb diet.
That's our the CSIRO Total Wellbeing Diet, which is focused on higher protein, low carbohydrate.
Right.
And healthy fats.
And healthy fats,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
I like them.
Alrighty, moving on. Let's have another chat here with a lady called Jenni Erbel, who is in fact a celiac. So we'll find out all about celiac disease, gluten-free options, this, that, and the other.
Is your food making you sick? You might be shocked to learn over 355,000 Australians have celiac disease. Gluten makes them horribly sick, and while some people have jumped on the idea they'll feel better eating gluten-free as a kind of lifestyle thing, true celiacs don't have a choice. Like our first guest, Jenni Erbel.
G'day, Jenni.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks, Jenni. Now, what we want to find out about is a condition that you have called celiac disease. What is it? How do you get it? Fill us in.
Sure. It basically means that I suppose I'm allergic to gluten. That's probably the easiest thing is, lots of people have allergies. My allergy is around gluten. My body doesn't like it.
What happens if you have gluten?
Well, for a lot of people, they get a lot of different, I suppose, side effects. My side effect is I actually have a feeling of being hungover for about 5 days.
Oh, no.
With a lot of headache.
Part.
Without the fun part. So most of the time people tend to throw up or have diarrhea or have bloating. There's even some people that are asymptomatic. So they actually have no symptoms at all. But in my case, that tends to be mine. That feeling of being unwell and you wake up and go, I feel dusty and vague and headachy. That's my thing. So it's an allergy to gluten.
How do most people, including yourself, actually find out they've got this problem?
I believe most people who have the situation where they've got the diarrhea and they're throwing up tend to be easily diagnosed. In my case, mine was very vague. So how I got discovered is there actually is a blood test you can do, and you can also have an endoscopy in order to diagnose. So the little camera that goes down the throat and ends up in your stomach. So mine was a bit unusual because the symptoms were so vague. So it took 3 years from when I started feeling unwell before I actually got diagnosed with it. So it wasn't a good thing at all. But it's a fairly they say common disease. They think about 10% of people in Australia actually are celiacs. It's just how many of them are diagnosed.
And yet there are so many people affected by it. I mean, how do you get it? Do you catch it? Are you born with it?
That's a really good question. I asked the doctor the same thing. And in my family, there's a number of autoimmune diseases. My doctor believes that it's because the modified wheat has actually been the trigger for it. So both of my kids have been tested if they are celiac, and they've both come back as a negative. I also lived on a cane farm where they used to, in the good old 1960s and the early 1970s, used to spray with a lot of chemicals that are no longer able to be sprayed. And there has been some connection that I understand to people that have been diagnosed with auto disease, and this is a consequence. So whilst I'm not a doctor, it does appear to be there's a genetic link in my family, and we've also been exposed to circumstances, both chemically as well as via diet, that not sure which one was the trigger, but they're all present.
Well, because we're talking to lots of people who are travelling, maybe people who aren't. But what happens when you want to go out and have something to eat, go to a restaurant?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. I must admit at the beginning, that's probably the hardest thing of just being brave enough to go out. I actually went out for dinner last night. You know the restaurants that most of the food is gluten-free, and that's Indian and Thai. When I do go out, even if it's to an Indian or Thai restaurant, as I did last night, it's always letting the restaurant know that you're a celiac. I need something that's gluten-free, and checking that there's been no contamination as well. So a lot of menus will actually show you what is gluten-free, which is great, but I'll always ask the question. For example, chips in a lot of places is gluten-free, and this is hot chips, not potato chips. I'll ask the question, when you're frying those chips, are you frying them in a special area that only the things that get fried in there actually are gluten-free? So you ask about, is the meal gluten-free, and then you ask around, is there any, I suppose, what's the chance of contamination from it being cooked with other things that actually have gluten as well? For people that are listening, there's nothing wrong with fruit, vegetables, any sort of meat. The issue becomes around things that are in cans, things that are sauces, and obviously breads.
Actually, before we met you, I was told by your husband that you're celiac, so I popped into the supermarket and grabbed a whole heap of gluten-free Veggies and treats and things. I couldn't believe how much more expensive they are.
Yeah, and you're right, Kate. It's not that it's a problem, but if you go there looking for gluten-free, yes, it's expensive. The bread is expensive. In a lot of cases, the gluten-free food that's marketed as gluten-free can also be high in sugar and high in fat in order to make it tasty. So sometimes, I mean, it's the ultimate insult. As my grandson says, sucks to be you. It's like, great, I've paid all this extra for something I actually don't like, and it's awful. Or I'm going to get fat. And the doctor actually said to me after being diagnosed, said, you've really got to watch your diet now, because if all you do is buy everything gluten-free, you're going to put weight on because it's generally highly processed. So it's sort of finding the mid-range of what's healthy, what's obviously all got to be gluten-free, and how do I still have little treats but see them as treats. And how do I change, which essentially is a new regime for eating, and not focusing on packaged gluten-free, actually focusing on unprocessed gluten-free most of the time.
So what do you got to deal with as a celiac? What are some of the issues on a day-to-day basis?
So what I generally do is if we're going out, I'll always have something in my bag that's gluten-free, because you can never guarantee that you can be somewhere where maybe I'm going to be provided for, if that makes sense. So I've always got a supply. That way I know there's not an issue. And it tends to either be a piece of fruit or it's something that's highly processed, which is fine. But most of the time, the focus I have is on eating just, it sounds boring, really healthy, meat, fruit, vegetables, and trying to cut down on processed things.
Yep.
And it works.
Well, in doing a bit of research before our chat, I went looking online and found coeliac.org.au, spelled Coeliac. But the name is spelled different ways in different places.
Yes, and it's funny when I saw the name celiac, I looked it up because I always thought it had the O in it. But when you look online, it's actually got the two different sorts of spelling of it. So I learned something too, going, there's two ways of spelling celiac.
So that's where people can go and get more information if they think they might be a celiac. It's good to know you're not alone.
Exactly right. They also have a really good app that has every ingredient and every preservative. So one of the ways initially when I was a celiac was you'd look at something and it doesn't say it on the packet, and you look through every ingredient. Well, they've got a marvellous little app that you can look up every ingredient and every number of preservative to then be able to ascertain yourself by reading the actual ingredients with which you're actually buying is gluten-free. And that was probably the best thing ever, was getting that app so that I felt empowered when I was out going shopping, especially as a new celiac.
Awesome. Thanks very much for joining us today. I've learnt a lot, and I think everyone else has too.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I was just going to say very quickly, our Healthy Lifestyles Australia dietitian, nutritionist Caitlyn Henderson would be very impressed hearing you talk about, you got to eat veggies and fruit and all this sort of stuff. I think that's great.
No doubt, but I've got to say, and I say to my husband quite often, I know I'd eat a lot better because I'm diagnosed as a celiac, because it takes away the choice of eating a whole lot of things I would have eaten. And because I don't have a choice in it, it's easy to comply, because it's a fairly much if I cross the line, I'm going to get whacked.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that in this house.
Yes,
yeah.
But that's a good thing. You've got to look for the silver lining.
Exactly.
That's important. You've got to do it.
Wonderful. We hope you can join us again and tell us even more.
Excellent. Well, thanks a lot. I've enjoyed the chat.
Incredible stuff. No fun being a celiac, and 80% of people who have it actually don't even know they've got it.
And it's the same with diabetes.
Yeah. So just have a look at what's going on down there and see how you go. And also, after talking with Jenni, I'm pretty certain I can do a much better job in the future making gluten-free delights for our friends with celiac disease.
Yeah, if you'd like to know more about this disease and whether you might have it, there's an anonymous self-diagnosis questionnaire on the coeliac.org.au website. That's coeliac, coeliac.org.au, which is well worth checking out.
All right, well, look, there's, as you said in one of the, in fact, our very first episode, there's so many books out there that have got some great information for people who are just trying to learn about diets and, the food and all the rest of it. So what do you got?
Well, ta-da! I mentioned this when we were doing the prawn and asparagus and green capsicum and zucchini yummy dish, which was beautiful. And we used garlic and onion infused oil, extra virgin olive oil. So low FODMAP is something that more and more people are trialing because some of us don't do well with real onion and real garlic. So Dr. Sue Shepherd is the person who came up with the whole concept of FODMAP, which is fructooligosaccharides and other stuff. And it helps people deal with irritable bowel syndrome, which is really nasty.
It's actually quite a common thing, isn't it?
Well, you can be constipated or have diarrhea.
Yeah.
So, there's lots of things that, make life difficult. If you've got to dash off to the loo all the time, it's not good fun. So anyway, that's a really good book to read. Dr. Sue Shepherd's Low FODMAP Recipes. She's got other books out as well, but this one I found particularly good. Delicious recipes in there. And while we're at it, this is the latest CSIRO book. I actually got this one from the library because I'm like that. I say, "Oi, have you got the latest books?"
And then they buy them for
They
them.
do. And great. There's a brand new one. I'm the first to read it.
You can do that too. Actually, no, we shouldn't say that because we want to buy the CSIRO diets, don't we?
You can say that. That's one way of doing it. But once you read it, then you want to buy your own. That's why I get them from the library first. And then once I like, I buy. So this is the CSIRO low-carb diet easy 100. And so they're easy recipes, easy things. They talk about how you can make, everyday recipes much healthier for you, easier for your tummy to digest.
Chili, egg and mushroom savoury porridge.
No, you can't have that at the moment. No, we're doing a low FODMAP thing.
So this is the problem. There's all these great diets in here, like recipes and things, right? And they're perfect, they're healthy. But if you're trying to fix up something that you've got wrong, you can't have this, you can't have that. It's like...
you work your way through it. And like with the low FODMAP stuff, you actually take yourself off a lot of things you'd normally eat, normal mushrooms. You can have oyster mushrooms, but not regular ones. You can have canned pumpkin, but not butternut pumpkin, which are things that, we're eating. So we're trying to follow the low FODMAP thing for a while to see what life's like. But the recipes in here are delicious. And I did make one last night, which was a yummy bolognese with a low FODMAP style gluten-free pasta made from rice and corn.
And I think, I don't know about you, when you were doing the CSIRO diet, did you feel you were missing out on anything?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I almost felt like I was eating like a queen. It was, the recipes were delicious, easy to do, and I felt I was eating a lot more than what I would normally do.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. All righty, well, we're going to have a lot more of the kind of the healthy diets, and depending on what you've got, don't forget, make sure you see a nutritionist or a qualified dietitian or a qualified nutritionist as well. Accredited, there's the word. ACD, isn't it? Accredited dietitian? No, anyway.
I thought you were talking about you. Okay.
And, of course, doctors are great, but, they don't actually know everything about everything, sadly. So
they only get one term on nutrition, so they're a good pointer. You then go to an accredited dietitian, nutritionist, and learn more about what's going to keep us healthier and happier into our old age so that we don't get dementia or Alzheimer's. We still get to enjoy treats.
And bottom line,
it's okay to have treats.
Exactly. And bottom line, do your own research, but make sure it's positive research from ideally Australian universities and organisations.
People and organisations we put on our website. You can go there to check out some suitable links to find places where you'll find really good authoritative information.
Fantastic. Last words, Jocey?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very Alrighty, thank you very much for joining us on the PooCast podcast. We hope you enjoy this. If you like what we do, please share with a friend. If you don't, let us know. Talk to you next time. See ya.
Thanks for joining us today on the PooCast podcast. If you like what we do, please share. And remember, our stories are for general information only. Make sure you always seek advice from your registered health professional. And thanks again for listening.